We feel fear because the fear that we have exceeds the skill set of the thing that we're doing. In other words, our fear is bigger than how good we are at the thing. And when we get to the level where our skill set or the skills that we have are higher than that of the fears that we have, that is when we do really cool shit. Welcome to the Ryan Rice Show, where we talk about what we learned yesterday that we can apply today so that we can be better tomorrow. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. A common problem I hear from a lot of new investors is they say things like, I'm scared to make offers. What if I can't find any lenders? What if my contractors mess up my house or take my money? And there's a lot of other things that kind of parallel with those concerns. And at the end of the day, it all just boils down to fear. And this is very normal. Our brains are wired to survive. They're not wired to succeed. And so we are naturally going to seek out the things that we are fearful of, and we are going to work subconsciously to avoid them. And the more that we realize this, the more that we can ensure that our actions are not reliant upon our feelings. In other words, we can act despite how we feel about something. And this can be applied to anything that we're doing, really, any profession, anything new. If you're a salesperson, you might be scared of saying the wrong thing, and therefore, in the middle of a sales conversation, you're thinking about what to say next as opposed to genuinely connecting with and listening to the person on the other line. You might have a fear that if you're in a W-2 and you have a huge job interview for a promotion that's coming up, you might have a fear that if you don't get the promotion, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What is the next 12 months of my life going to look like if I don't get this promotion? You may have a fear just generally of trying something new if you're in a W-2 job and you want to start your own business. That in and of itself could be fearful. And so I was having a conversation with my team last week, and we were talking about exactly this topic. And a member of my sales team said he heard this thing from Grant Cardone that really helped him with where he's at developmentally in his learning curve from a sales perspective. And I thought it was really, really good. And so I wanted to make this episode. Grant Cardone said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, we feel fear because the fear that we have exceeds the skill set of the thing that we're doing. In other words, our fear is bigger than how good we are at the thing. And when we get to the level where our skill set or the skills that we have are higher than that of the fears that we have, that is when we do really cool shit. And I thought that was really, really good. And looking back, there are many times in my career where I have applied this exact framework through getting through something like fear. And so I wanted to make this episode in the event you might be going through something where maybe it's something new for the first time, or you are just feeling fear with what it is that you're doing. And this might be of help to help push through that fear. And I think the very first thing that can help us push through fear is just acknowledging the fact that, one, our brain is trained and we are just naturally wired to avoid pain. And so that fear that we feel is very normal. And if we know that, it means we know the reason that we're feeling the fear, and it means that we can do what it is that we know that we need to do despite how it is that we feel. And the thing that we need to do is do so many repetitions of the thing that we're actually fearful of doing that we acquire a skill set that we hadn't had before, and we do it so many times where eventually we acquire a skill set that then outweighs our fear. And I want to give a real life example of this. I have someone on my sales team who, when he first started making sales calls, he would really struggle with a natural flow of conversation. And we uncovered that the reason for this is because when he was communicating with a prospect, he was always thinking about, what should I say next? What should I say next? And he would get lost as a result, because if he's thinking about what should I say next, he's not truly listening to and engaging with the prospect. And therefore, he would miss these opportunities to get to know the prospect well, to ask a great follow-up question, to mirror the prospect back to ensure that he fully understands what it is that the prospect is telling him. And because he was thinking about what to say next and not actually listening, he would miss these great opportunities to either connect and build rapport, or to ask a follow-up question that would be a key follow-up question that would then lead to a great part of a sales conversation. And it was so funny because we've been reviewing a lot of his sales calls recently, and the growth has been tremendous. And the only difference between now and previous is that he's put in so much repetition that now his skill set simply outweighs the fear that he had about being so worried about what to say next. And so he put in so many repetitions with this type of sales call that he simply doesn't have to be fearful anymore, because he knows what happens, right? He knows what happens next. A prospect typically says, for example, maybe 1 of 5 things, and he knows what the responses to those 5 things are. And he can now truly focus and engage on what the prospect is saying. And he doesn't have to be fearful of what he might say next. And he can just truly engage with the client. And I thought that was so good, and it can be used in anything, really. And it's really helped him developmentally. Real quick, as you guys know, I just recently started this podcast. If you could give it a rating with a quick tap of the thumb, that would mean the world to me. And even more importantly, it could help spread the word to a broader audience, which in turn could help change a life. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. And I want to give an example of when this exact concept has helped me. And I'll tell a story of early on in my real estate career. And it was right before I started acquiring real estate assets at scale. Right before I went on a tear and I bought about 11 houses in 6 months, I had a conversation with my mentor, and it was pivotal. It was honestly one of the reasons why I started buying a whole bunch of houses very quickly. And I reached out to him one time because I was frustrated. And I was frustrated because I had put in a certain amount of offers, a certain amount of time, and I wasn't seeing any success yet. And the feedback that he gave me, he said, "Ryan, here's what's happening. You are so analytical, and it's very helpful, but you're almost so analytical to a fault, because what you're doing is you are getting ready, you're aiming again, you're re-aiming again just to make sure that you're aimed right at the target, and then you're firing." He's like, if you can switch your mentality a little bit and you ready, fire, and then adjust your aim based on where that bullet hits, and then you fire and then you adjust your aim again, you're going to be a lot more successful, because you're actually taking action, and then you can learn based on the action that you're taking. And it was like a light bulb for me. And the second I made that shift is when I started buying a whole bunch of real estate assets. So what happened is I was so focused on the fact that I didn't have the outcome that I wanted yet, that it was impacting the level of action that I was taking. And it was like when I switched my mentality to focus on the action that I was taking, which essentially was me focused on who I was becoming in that process and not focusing on whether or not I had the outcome, that's when stuff started to really, really happen. And I think that's a good segue into the second part here of getting over fears. Another part of the fears that we have is that we put in a substantial amount of time, we put in a substantial amount of effort, and we're just not sure if it's going to work. And I think that keeps a lot of people from actually taking any action, because a lot of us crave certainty, right? Especially with me as a background coming from corporate America, Fortune 30, W2. At least my experience has been most of the people in that world, one of the reasons why they're in that world, in that world for a very long period of time, is because we value certainty. And for those of us who value certainty, why would we put up a whole bunch of time and effort into something that we're not 100% certain that we might see an outcome after, when we could just continue the thing that we're doing, which we have been rewarded for, at least in my case, when I was W2, I was rewarded for these actions for over a decade, and there was a ton of certainty revolving that job. Why would I try something new and put in a whole bunch of time and effort not knowing that it's going to work? And I think we can combat this with a simple reframe of the mind. And that reframe is, as soon as we realize that the whole point of what it is, whatever endeavor that we want to go on, the whole point is not to achieve some sort of specific outcome, but the whole point is who we become in the process. And that regardless of whatever outcome that we have, if we achieve an outcome, if we don't achieve an outcome, we're going to become someone throughout that process that we were not before. We become someone with an entirely different skill set. We become someone who has a lot more tools than we had before. And if we know that that is the expectation is simply that we grow. The expectation is simply that we are becoming a person that is in line with our future self. We're becoming someone that we have to be in order to achieve what it is that we want to achieve in the future. Then whether or not we achieve an outcome is irrelevant. And it can essentially erase any fears that we might have about whether or not it's going to work. Because if what's important is who we become and not whether or not it's going to work, then there is no fear of whether or not it's going to work. And I love that as a mind hack because, again, I think that prevents a lot of us from getting started doing anything. Oh my gosh, what if I put in the next 5 years and I'm even further behind of where I was before financially, or what will so-and-so think of me? None of that matters because the outcome actually doesn't matter. What matters is who we become in the process, and we become someone in the process who is in line with who we want to be in the future. I have found that thought to be so freeing, and it's helped me, so I wanted to share a framework in the event that it might help you as well, especially because, again, one of the most common issues or obstacles I see pop up with new investors is fear, which in a lot of cases we just make up in our own heads. So knowing how to handle it, knowing why it's there, knowing what to do despite how it is that we feel has been really important to, I think, my professional growth. And I wanted to share with you guys in the event that it might have a similar impact on you. And I'll close with this. I've found, honestly, this to be a hack to work more. Because if my focus shifts to simply growth and I'm not worried about whether or not I've achieved X outcome or Y outcome, then I'm never demotivated by what I am or am not achieving. And in other words, I never get high off of the highs that I'm feeling if I'm doing really well. And I never get low or depressed if I'm doing something or I'm not achieving something that I think I should be. My focus is simply just work, just simply doing the thing. And me focusing on that has helped me just find intrinsic joy out of just doing the work. And guess what I'll do more of if I find it joyful? I'll just do more work. And so this whole framework has been a hack to me to just simply put in some more work. And I wanted to share it with you guys in the event that if you can use that as a hack and it helps you put in some more work, and in turn that additional work is going to help you achieve more things, then hopefully that's helpful to you guys. So thank you so much for listening. If you found that helpful and you know someone who you think might benefit from hearing it, I would truly appreciate if you shared it. That is the best way that this podcast grows, and that's a way that you can give me feedback that you like what it is that I'm doing, is by sharing it with others. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your attention, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.